when you vote, you feel included.
Majority of the Kenyans here are very eager to participate in this particular exercise. I seriously suggest that an alternative means of voting, especially for people, Kenyans in diaspora, is sought, is the accessibility to the places that are designated as polling or voting stations.
Out of the three, we could only go to the Kenya High Commission in Ottawa. In Toronto, we go to the consulate. And in British Columbia, there is also a consulate. That's the only place we could go for voter registration and the general elections that are coming up in August.
The next best thing would have been to have registration at all countries where there are Kenyan missions and embassies.
Distance and the related costs of traveling to the three centers to vote may be a hindrance or may reduce diaspora participation.
The countdown to Kenya's 2022 general elections has begun, and Kenyans living in the enlisted countries are joining the rest of the country in voter registration. The Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission, IEBC, is carrying out voter registration in Kenyan embassies and consulates in Kampala, Dar es Salaam, Kigali, Bujumbura, Pretoria, Juba, Washington, D.C., New York, and Los Angeles. Others also include Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, Berlin, Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. We connect with Kenyans in various countries to hear their opinion and experience on diaspora voting. Hello and welcome to Diaspora Life with me, Pasil Telewa, and my co-host Chris Wamalwa, who is currently in Washington, D.C. Chris shares a story of how Kenyans in the diaspora feel about what's happening as IEBC rolls out a program towards making their vote count.
Early last month, IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati issued what he termed highlights on the upcoming elections as it concerns Kenyans living abroad. In the outline, diaspora voter registration exercise was to take place from 21st January to 6th February. He announced that Kenyans living abroad will only be able to vote for president. He also added that the United States, the United Kingdom, South Sudan, Canada, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Germany had been added to diaspora voting locations. However, Mr. Chebukati stressed that voting will take place only at embassies, high commissions, and consulates in these locations, while registration to vote will be done during the official working hours. Reactions to this announcement from Kenyans living abroad were swift, varied, fast, and furious. At the time of the announcement, I was in Nairobi, so I sought the views of Dr. Shem Ochodo, President of Kenya Diaspora Alliance.
Chris, first of all, I must compliment IEBC for having decided to add 6 new countries among the diaspora destinations to register in the upcoming elections. It doesn't go far enough for us because as Kenya Diaspora Alliance, our best bet would have been diasporas wherever they are being registered, able to register. Technology, of course, would allow that to happen. The next best thing would have been to have registration at all countries where there are Kenyan missions and embassies. But of course, the third best option, which IEBC has picked up, is to pick on certain destinations where there are large numbers of Kenyans. The USA, Canada, UK, Germany, and so on, and Middle East, Qatar and UAE in particular. And we're happy for that, and South Sudan, not to mention. So to that extent, we compliment IEBC that half a loaf is better than none, and we're happy that's happened. But having said that, I am also afraid while IEBC seems to have learned some mistakes, they don't seem to have learned enough. One of the mistakes that happened in the last election, I think, actually not the last election, 2013 election, I was registered as a voter in Kampala. Living in South Sudan, I came to Kenya to register. Registration had ended, but it was extended for 1 week in the diaspora. So I flew out to Kampala. The sad thing was, while I was in Kampala, I witnessed almost 99% of Kenyans being turned away. They'd come to register with national IDs, but IEBC insisted they must have a regular passport.
While some in the diaspora felt it was a commendable first step towards expanding voting opportunities for majority of Kenyans living abroad, there are some who were of the view that the steps the IEBC had taken were too little, too late. I also reached out to Professor David Monda, a Kenyan international politics lecturer at City University in New York.
As you can remember, Chris, the first round the IEBC tried to register voters, it was only in Kenya. And they fell very much below their target of registered voters. They wanted above 6 million. I think they only got 1.5 million voters. So that also shows you there's a problem of voter apathy, right?
Yes.
People are not so sure about registering. And of course, Kenyans always register last minute. So that's a challenge. But I think for us in the diaspora, what was of a big interest was the second round of voting, of registration, because that covers, the second round now covers the diaspora.
Recently, I visited the Kenyan embassy in Washington, D.C. to see how the voter registration process was going on. A week into the process, it was clear that voter registration apathy had set in. The huge numbers one would expect to see during such processes were clearly missing. Almost a whole week into the exercise, less than 100 people had registered.
The information hasn't really been disseminated well, especially the fact that it's a walk-in and there are no long lines. Then the second thing is just the location. You have to be in the Washington, D.C. area.
In Canada, the second largest country in the world, the voter registration process had not even started at the time of compiling this report. This is in part due to Canada's stringent COVID-19 restrictions.
One of the things we realized is that, first of all, we had to appreciate the effort that has been made by enabling the diaspora to be able to vote. This is something that we have been agitating for many, many years. And at some point, I think it even ended up in court because we were feeling the diaspora was disenfranchised. We were not able to have a say in the Kenyan political dispensation. And this was a great move. But one of the things, we had the IEBC delegation coming over here in Canada. We had a conversation. We put together all the stakeholders in Canada, and we engaged them regarding that issue of the number of voter polling stations. We were only allocated three of them here in Canada, sorry. And out of the three, we could only go to the Kenya High Commission in Ottawa. In Toronto, we go to the consulate. And in British Columbia, there is also a consulate. That's the only place we could go for voter registration and the general elections that are coming up in August. So we engaged them about that, and the IEBC mentioned that they can only work within the law. So it's up to the various stakeholders in Kenya, including the political leadership, to ensure that they enable the law that would allow other polling stations to be established. But I must say that the silver bullet for this kind of setup would be probably having online voting so that every Kenyan, wherever they are in the diaspora, they're able to vote, regardless of whatever area they are, whether they're in an urban area or they are in a remote area, whichever part of the country they are.
We are so grateful that this opportunity has come at a very, unique time, especially in the midst of the COVID. And I think Maura, before I go to your question, Maura has alluded to a very important aspect into how maybe some of these things also have been done, and that is online, just as we are doing now. So when I look at the population of the Kenyans that are in British Columbia, the province that I do represent the Kenyans, it's a very kind of a mixed kind of a demographic of Kenyans. We have about, would talk of everybody involved, we are talking about 30,000 people of Kenyan origin and of Kenyan descent. That is meaning people who are married to Kenyans and who have gotten some status of Kenyan, through registration and all that. And one of the things, presiding this particular event was the registration or the application of passports, the new passports. I think that was a good start that was able to scuttle or to maybe make the bubble for the people to start buzzing up and warming up to the event. Unfortunately, the registration that ought to have started, I think a few days ago, has not yet started. It's starting on the 1st of February up to the 15th. And I think this was due to the complications brought by the COVID-19 and the Omicron and all those lockdown and, provincial restrictions and of course travel. But I could technically say that majority of the Kenyans here are very eager to participate in this particular exercise. And as Maura has mentioned, there are a few handles, challenges. For example, accessibility. And this is why I would seriously suggest that an alternative means of voting, especially for people, Kenyans in diaspora, is sought, is the accessibility to the places that are designated as polling or voting stations. For example, when you talk about the population, the majority of people in British Columbia are there, in places like Vancouver, Surrey, Burnaby, and environs. But now you find that the consulate, it's somehow, let me use this one, as one of the members told me, in the village. And this is a place called Abbotsford. It's quite, you have to have means of transportation to that place. Like you have to have your own car to go there. And of course, we know people in diaspora, and especially Kenyans, having a car is not a luxury, it's a necessity, but not everybody can access that. Because again, having it and maintaining it is another case all the same.
Hi there, my name is Jane Modoni Nyagamatskait. I live in Hamburg, Germany. And today I wanted to share with you briefly about my experience as a first-time voter in the diaspora. And this was just different from what I'm used to in Kenya. Because when I went to vote, it was not far away from where I live, because that is where they had put me. And in the room where I went to vote, I was the only one. And it was so quiet and so peaceful. Although everyone knew that it was a voting day, and after Angela Merkel exited, after 16 years of being a German chancellor, it was a big thing. Normally one would think, but it was just normal. And it made me think, wow, you mean people can vote peacefully? Because everyone was like, who will be the next German chancellor? It's a big thing. It's a big thing. And to my surprise, it was just so normal. Your vote counts. Don't sit back when things are going not the way you want, and you sit back because you're a foreigner, you think nobody cares. They care, and when you vote, you feel, included. Here in Germany, the posters, even advertising posters, of different candidates, they have regulations of where to put these posters. They don't put them everywhere. They don't put them on houses and, fill the whole house with somebody's posters. No.
In the second part of this show, we treat you to an exclusive interview with the Kenyan ambassador to the US, Lazarus Amayo, who answers your questions on how the embassy is facilitating Kenyans in the US for the August 9th poll.
The government of Kenya values its diaspora and the great contribution that the diaspora makes towards the socio-economic development agenda for the Republic of Kenya. Chris, you would appreciate that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made all the efforts to incorporate and mainstream diaspora to an extent that diaspora is one of the pillars in our foreign policy. And so the diaspora in the US being the largest Kenyan diaspora, largest in terms of numbers and largest also in terms of contributions. Even if you go to remittances, this year Kenya has registered, actually from last year to date, diaspora remittances of about $3.7 billion, and out of that about 60% are contributions from the Kenyan diaspora in the United States. But over and above remittances, we also recognize the considerable financial and intellectual resources that the diaspora have that would be useful in Kenya's development, even on investment or even in promotion of our higher education back at home. And so we are happy that this time the United States has been included in the countries that will provide an opportunity for Kenyans to vote. We started the exercise last week on Friday, on the 21st. That is when we did the launch with Madam Gladys Mwangi, the team leader from IEBC.
I was speaking to Balosi Chegi and they said the government can only facilitate. And that's what you've done here at the embassy in Washington, D.C. Could you just speak briefly about the preparations? Let's say 50 people turn up right now. Are they able to register?
We, together with the IEBC, are prepared for the exercise. And as you rightfully pointed out, what Ambassador Shege told you, the registration is being conducted by the IEBC. But the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through its missions abroad, facilitate the IEBC to conduct the registration.
That's right.
We have provided space enough to accommodate Kenyans that would come for registration. We've even created extra space in case there's spillover. So in terms of logistics, we are on top of things. The staff from the IEBC are also very committed to this exercise. In as much as we say registration starts at 9 o'clock and ends at 5 o'clock, the officers here, through the team leader, Madam Gladys Mwangi, have created provisions to serve Kenyans that even if they come at 5 o'clock, and should the queue even be longer, they'll be able to serve all those that have come for voter registration, irrespective of the time that they'll be able to complete the exercise. And so really, in terms of logistics, everything is in place. We have had no hitch so far. And what we would perhaps add is just to urge Kenyans to come and register. And also to further clarify that the government did extend the validity of the dark blue machine-readable passport, what we call the old passport, which was supposed to expire on 31st of December last year. The government has extended its validity to November 2022, this year. So Kenyans with the old generation passport are able to use them for all purposes, including the voter registration.
Many people, especially the diaspora, have complained about two things, especially in the US. One is that the three locations are not adequate. We have Kenyans in Alaska. It will take almost more than 10 hours to get here to register. So that's the main complaint, is that the locations are very few.
Those concerns are real. We as the embassy in our engagement with the IEBC before, and even a few weeks ago when the IEBC commissioner and delegation were around for diaspora voter or mapping exercise. We did express to them the concerns that unlike other countries, the US is a vast country with our diaspora spread across this country. And so the centers of New York and LA and Washington, DC would not be adequate for purposes of making it user-friendly for the diaspora to register and eventually to vote.
That's right.
And so that is something that was not hidden. We did that during the diaspora virtual meetings that we facilitated or worked together with the IEBC in our engagement with Kenyans. We did emphasize that distance and related costs of traveling to the 3 centers to vote may be a hindrance or may reduce diaspora participation, both in the voter registration as well as ultimately in the voting exercise on 9th of August. And so we appeal to the IEBC to seriously consider initiating through Parliament an amendment in the Election Act to be able to allow the IEBC to register Kenyans in states and cities where there is a large concentration of Kenyans, irrespective of whether there are consulates in them or not.
That's right.
And also to look ahead and be able to have a provision where the IEBC can go into centers where the Kenyans are and do registration for particular centers. In that way, they will have reached a much larger number and will have reduced the cost that the diaspora incurs in the process of registration and ultimately voting. And so we are together with the diaspora in this. What they have raised through you is genuine, is real. We have already addressed the IEBC on that aspect. And so we hope that the IEBC for subsequent elections will be able to take this into consideration and working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be able to see where possibilities of additional consulates or additional honorary consuls or consulates that can be avenues through which many Kenyans can be able to get services, not only for voter registration, but get consular services, and in this regard also be able to use those centers as voting centers.
That's all we've got time for you today. Join us again next Friday on KTN News as we bring you a Valentine's special edition featuring Diaspora Life. Don't miss. Remember to share, comment, like, and write to us through Diaspora Life at standardmedia.co.ke. You can also follow me on my social media handles at Pasil Telewa on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok for more interaction. Till next time, have a fantastic weekend ahead. I've been your host, Pasil Telewa, and see you soon.